Cute. All right. Hi, everybody. Pam from Around the Table Yarns. As my two Zoom people are like, yeah, we know who you are. Today we're going to be doing one of my all-time favorite characters. He's been in my queue to do forever, Hobbs from the most beloved comic strip ever, Calvin and Hobbs. And there are lots of Hobbs patterns on Ravelry, but this one has always stood out to me. She just gets the face and the expressions so well. So I've wanted to do this forever. It is a free pattern on her website. This is done by Anne. I didn't actually copy her name on here, and I really should. Anne somebody or another. Hold, please. I went to her website and I just cut and copied the written pattern and I just put it into a PDF. It is like, she actually writes some really lovely things, and I highly recommend her website. Let me get to Ravelry. Let me just get her name because I really feel like I should be sharing her name. Oh, patterns, Hobbs. Here it is. Anne Stiver Bala is her name. I think she goes by Suki Girl. And like I said, it's on her website. And I copied and pasted all of the directions and made it into a PDF. So if you're watching this later, not live with us now, and you want the PDF, I'm happy to email that to you. Or you can just do it free from her website, but it didn't come as a free download. But I copied and, like I said, pasted it into a PDF document. So I'm happy to share that with you. So the pattern is written for worsted weight yarn. I happen to be making it out of Malabrigo Rios. You need 3 colors. Several people are doing it out of our coastal cotton. Let me just grab it because it's right here. Right, do that. One person, instead of black stripes, was going to be using one of the multicolored prints to do it. But for me, I felt like the glazed carrot from Malabriga was like the perfect Hobbs color. And this is going to be a gift for my husband who loves Calvin and Hobbs. I showed him what I was doing and he's like, will you make a Calvin too? I'm like, we'll see. I couldn't find a good Calvin pattern. You can absolutely do this in, I think Soft Fun would be an excellent choice, or Color Crafter. He will be slightly smaller, but would be great choice. And there's lots of great color options in that. You could do it even in smaller if you wanted to, but the pattern is written for worsted weight. She has you using worsted weight and a 4.5 millimeter hook. I tried that and it was too loose for me. And for me, Rios is on the thinner side of worsted weight. So I am actually using a 3.5 millimeter hook for that. I think Ingrid is using a 4 millimeter hook on her coastal cotton. That worked for her. Rocky was using the coastal cotton, I think using a slightly bigger hook, but she was happy with that. So the nice thing about as long as you're happy with the fabric, it's all good. All right. Her pattern, I'm going to switch to my camera here so I can show this. And since it's a free pattern, I feel like I'm not giving anything. I'm not sharing any liberties here. Share. All right. Let me zoom in just a little. Oh, that's really washed out. Let's turn. Ah, there we go. Okay. So she does give some notes here about what you're going to need. You need obviously your yarn. She did it in a worsted weight, and you will need less than 100 grams of each color. Black felt for eyes, nose, and stripes. The top of Hobbs's head, right here, those stripes on the top are actually felt pieces, which we're going to spend some time in the third session doing all of his features. You'll need a little bit of embroidery floss for underneath his nose. Safety eyes, unless you want to use felt for your eyes, which you can. Darning needle and stuffing. All of the other stripes are done with the yarn. She also notes in her pattern that you're working in the round, and at the end of each round, you will slip stitch to join the end of your round and then chain one. And she notes that this will minimize the jogless stripes to give you a nice seamless stripe. And I tried it. I tried it here, and I was not terribly successful. I wasn't crazy about, this happens to be the headpiece. The stripes don't go all the way around on the head. They just are on the back of the head, and then this will be front of his face right there. I wasn't crazy how they were coming out. So this one I did, as we've done other amigurumi, in a spiral. You get a spiral design. You slip stitch and then chain one, but it keeps going. So I did a little research, and I found a better way to do the stripes. So here's stripe, stripe, stripe. And here's where my color change is. It is nearly seamless. There is a little bit, you can kind of tell that's where the back is, but it is a really nice, clean, here it is on the leg. So there's the front, there's the back. You can tell just a little bit, but they make really even. You don't get the scattering of the stripe. I like this much better. So this is called, we're still going to be joining with a slip stitch and chaining one. We're not changing her pattern, but how we do the slip stitch is going to change. And we're going to do what's called an invisible close, or an invisible join, or a circle join. That is a really nice technique. So that's what I'm going to kind of focus on today, as well as the pattern. In going through all these pieces and trying to break it up, I figured out that, here's some of my notes. So today we're going to work on the body. Between now and next month, I should say, we're going to do the body, the legs, the arms, the tail, and the muzzle. I'm going to show you how to do the circle join with and without changing colors. And for the muzzle, you will have some decreasing as well as increasing for the rest of the pieces. Next month, we're going to do the head, the ears, and the belly band, or the oval on the belly, which she's got it kind of laid out in paper right here, because that's got some shaping to it. We'll do that next month. And then and we're going to do the third month, we're going to do the felt and adding the details and putting it all together. I felt like Hobbs deserved a 3-session breakdown. So again, today, between now and next month, and I'm going to add this to the website, we're going to do the body, the legs, the arms, and the tail, which are all done the same way. The reason I'm putting the head off for another month is because the stripes don't go all the way around on the head, and using this circle join, stopping in the middle of the round. I think once you understand how to do the circle join, doing this next month and stopping and starting your colors will be much easier. And then the ears are a triangle shape, again, all in black, so that's always fun to do. And we'll do she gives a nice breakdown on how to do the belly band, but we'll do that together. Okay, so let's get started. Everything starts basically the same. It's just what color do you start with? The um, the arms and legs all start with the white. There we go. Start with the white and then go into the black and then the orange and then alternating, and it tells you how many stripes to make. The body starts with the orange and then you get the striping pattern. The tail, I believe, which I have not started, and I'm not going to start here because it starts with the black yarn, and that's so hard to see on screen. I didn't want to start with that. So what I'm going to show you is in the white yarn. I'm going to show you how to do basically the arms and the legs, but the same technique applies to the body and the tail. And then I'll do a quick overview of the muzzle, so you get an idea of what you're making ahead of time. Okay, so I've got them in a kind of a nice array here, so I won't have to go all the way around, I don't think. All right, so this pattern, and Ingrid noticed today that my fingernails were painted to match this. I have nice orange for pops. It does start with a magic ring. You can still do, chain and then join if you want to. And if you were to do that, I would say chain 4 and then slip stitch to join into the first chain that you made, and then make your stitches into that. I think a chain 4 is a good amount. So this starts with 6 single crochets into your magic ring. Do those, and then I'm going to show you how to do the join. I was going to get thicker yarn to show this, but the day got away from me. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I do recommend, at least in the beginning, using a stitch marker to mark your first stitch of each round. Since I didn't grab one. I did share, so either a removable one. I have turned to using bobby pins for my crochet stitch markers because, and I'll show that here, they slip on really easy. They slip off really easy if you're pulling it. Otherwise, they don't move and they stay on really well. So when I dump this all in my bag, sometimes I feel like these, unless you have maybe some of the new Cocoa Knits ones, are a little tighter. Sometimes they fall off. And when you're doing short little rounds, the locking ones, I get annoyed in having to stop and start all the time with a locking one. So as an aside, if you've got any bobby pins around, which I didn't, I had to buy a pack, but now I have 100 of them. These make really nice crochet stitch markers. Okay. So I've got my 6 single crochets, and I'm going to zoom in to show this part. Okay. I'm going to pull my tail, bring my ring together. This first round, I would say, is fairly tricky because, like anything, there's no real fabric to hold on to. But I'm going to go to the very first chain is where I want to slip stitch and join. Let me see if I can just, there we go. So instead of doing a regular slip stitch in which I would go underneath both legs of that first single crochet I made, instead of doing it the regular way, I'm going to do what's called a circle join or an invisible join. And here's how you do that. I'm going to take the loop that's on the hook that I finished with. I'm going to take my hook out. I'm left a slightly larger loop so it doesn't come undone. I'm still going to go underneath those two legs, but I'm going to come from the back side instead of going underneath here like you usually would to slip stitch. I'm going to come from the back side, going underneath the same two legs. Okay. And because there's nothing to hold on to, this part's tricky. Once it gets bigger, it's much easier. I'm going to put that loop back on my hook. So I've come from the back to the front. And let me pull the right yarn. I'm going to kind of tighten that up a little. So I've put the loop back on the hook. I am going to pull that loop back through. So I've slip stitched. I haven't yarned over. But now the loop is kind of on the back of the stitches. Let me tighten up my center. And then not use my tail. So here's the first stitch that first single crochet I made. That's where I've done my slip stitch from the back and then chain one. And then my first round, which I'm looking at the leg pattern. Is to make 2 singles into each single round. So we're going to end up with 12. So the first place I'm going to make a stitch is right below that chain one I made. Here's my stitch. It's where I made the slip stitch. That's where my single is going to go. So I'm going to make 2 singles in there. And I'm going to mark the first of them. And use my bobby pin. So it just slides underneath there. It's not going to come out unless I pull it out. So now I'm going to go all the way around, putting 2 singles in each single from the first round until I've got 12 stitches. 2. And then I'm going to move to one that's a little further along. So this is the way that this increases through the rounds 1 through 4 is pretty typical. All right, so here's my first stitch. I've come back around. It does look a little different here. Tighten up my circle. The best way to tell if you are done or not is to count your stitches. So I'm going to count from my marked stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I still have 2 more stitches. So I still have a stitch right here. They're much easier to see when you're a little bit further away from the center. Okay, so now I have 12 stitches. Now I want to do that circle join into the first stitch that I completed. What's nice about using a stitch marker here is that you can use the stitch marker to kind of pull that stitch up a little bit, so it's easier to get your hook in underneath those legs as you go. So I'm going to slip my stitch marker out. I want to take the working yarn and kind of drop it to the back. I want it out of the way. I don't want it on the front side of my work. I want it on the back side. I'm going to pull a loop so that doesn't come undone. And I'm going to replace where the stitch marker was from the back, going underneath both loops. Then I'm going to put the loop back on the hook, tighten it up a little. My yarn's at the back, out of the way. Pull that through. All right, so there I've got my loop. I pulled it to the back side. I'm going to tighten it up. I'm going to chain 1. And now I'm ready to start my third round into the stitch right beneath the chain one. And on this round, you'll do one single and then two in the next. So the pattern repeats like that, one single and then two singles before you do an increase. I'm going to mark my first stitch. And I'm going to go all the way around, okay? So you're going to continue that, tuck the side. And I'm going to swap out this stitch marker. So you're going to do an increase like that until you get to 24 stitches. Okay. And once you get to 24 stitches, then you're going to be working 5 rows even, no increasing at all. Whoop, too dark. So what I'm actually going to take it back. So I was just past the beginning there. Now I'm just working even, no increasing. I want to make sure that I'm keeping my 24 stitches. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to loosen up. I'm going to put my yarn to the back. I'm going to come from behind with my hook. Put the loop back on the hook. Tighten it up a little bit so that I can pull it through. Chain one, and then continue on. My first stitch goes right underneath that chain one. And that's called a invisible join or a circle join. So what I want to do is you're going to keep on going like that until you get to it wants you to do a black stripe first. Black is so hard to see, but I'm going to move us forward just a little bit to where I'm ready to join the orange yarn, because that's much easier to see, the striping. So to continue on, when you're changing colors, so this will be just a repeat of this. Let's brighten it up just. Okay. There's no more increasing for the rest of this. You're just going to continue on with your 24 stitches. I'm going to do a quick check because it's kind of fell apart in my bag. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 18, 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay, I'm good. So the reason that I'm counting is that you do get a little bit of a gap here, which the circle join joins, but you can be unsure as to whether you have one more stitch or not. The easiest way is to count as you go. It's hard to see in this black. You'll be able to see it easier in the orange. Here's how you change colors. All right, so if we were on the white, moving to the black, we're starting a new color. I have cut off my other yarns here, so I'll be joining a new color. I'm going to take out my stitch marker, pull my loop, so nothing's changed there. Come from the back, put the loop back on, pull it through, and tighten it up. Here's where you change colors. The chain one. The chain one is where you change colors. So I'm going to introduce my orange yarn. And I just take a length like this. I leave myself a little bit of tail. You don't have to leave a whole lot because you don't have ends to weave in. So you don't have to leave a ton, but enough. And I just make a little loop with my hook. I'm sorry, with my yarn, and I loop it over the hook and I pull it through, and now I've chained one. Don't work with your tail. and then we continue on. I'm going to go into the first stitch right below there, only working with my orange yarn, and make my single crochet. And it makes a nice smooth. What it has done, hopefully you can see, is the slip stitch is right back here, but the new color has pushed it to the back, which is why we pull it to the back, so you can't see the color change. The slip stitch is the old color, and it's been pushed to the back, so all we see is the new color. So I'm going to do 3 or 4 stitches, and here's how I deal with my ends. So now I've joined a new color. If I was just starting, it would be from the white to the black. I take my end of my old and the end of my new, and I just tie them in just a regular knot, because it's going to be the inside and stuck. Nobody's going to see it. And then that keeps your stitch definition. Okay. So I'm just going to work around. I'm going to mark my first stitch, although it's very easy to see because it's a new color. So here's my first stitch. Right here, and there we go. Okay, so I've marked my first stitch.
Can I double check something? Around.
What's that?
Can I double check? So you went through the back loop, pulled up your black yarn, and then you slip stitch with the orange, right?
I chained 1 with the orange.
Chain 1 with orange.
The slip stitch happens with the old color. The chain 1 happens with the new color. Okay, so I'm going to move this back to black after I get around, do a couple of rounds here, so you can see how that happens. All right, so I'm just going to do my singles around. Hopefully it's only 24 on this part, which is why I decided to demonstrate the legs and the arms. That, and I needed to make 2 legs and 2 arms, so this helped. The only thing the arms differ is the length, I believe, of the white. And you add an extra stripe. So the white's a little shorter, and you have an extra stripe of orange and black. So when you're doing those even rounds of the white, rounds 5 through 9, you only go through 8, I believe. So the striping on this particular pattern is 2 rounds of each color. But I'm gonna go past this part, but then I'm gonna take it back and switch back to the black so that you don't have to watch me go all the way around again. All right, coming up on my stitch. 2 more to do. It's much easier to see now that we're past the fiddly part at the beginning where my stitches are. Okay, so I'm back to the beginning of the round. Here was my first stitch. I'm going to pull up on it a little bit because it can be a little tight to get your hook back in there, especially since you're kind of coming at it from the opposite direction. All right, working yarn goes to the back. And I wrote out these little steps. I'm going to post these on the website of how to do the circle join. I'll make these look pretty, not my handwriting, and so that you'll have the steps in order to do. And I will post those on the website while the video is downloading. Okay. So, release my hook, working yarn to the back. I've taken my stitch marker out, and that stitch is a little tight, so I'm gonna work it underneath from the back to the front, making sure I'm just coming underneath just those front loops. I'm sorry, those top loops. Okay. I'm going to put the loop back on my hook. I'm going to tug on my working yarn to get it secure on there, and then pull it through to the back. Okay. So now my working yarn is pulled through. And if I was continuing in another round of orange, I would chain one, and my first stitch is right here beneath my chain one, in the same stitch I had slip stitched to. And I would continue on, okay? Going all the way around. And you get a nice smooth, like you can't even tell where we stopped and started. Let me show you how to switch to, since the black is so hard to see, maybe I'll use the white. So let me come back. All right. So everything stays the same every round. The only place it changes is when you're changing colors. You slip stitch the exact same way, release the hook, pull the yarn to the back, come from underneath, come from the back side underneath those loops, pull it back, and here we are. The chain one is what determines the color of your next round. Okay, it's always the chain one. So if I was, the nice thing about the stripes is and because it's on the inside, I do not have to cut my orange yarn. I can leave it hanging. I left my black yarn hanging from before, and it's here for me to use. I don't have to cut ends at all. I'm ready to chain one for my next stripe. Whichever color you chain one in, that will be the color of the round. Okay. Let's see if that's maybe against the orange, it's easy to see. So sometimes you have to tighten up that slip stitch because it's in a different color, but you can always do it after you get a little bit away from it. I'm going to leave it for the time being, and I'll show you how to tighten that up. I'm going to actually leave it a little loose. All right, so now we're going to continue on in our black. So this is obviously I would have done a second round in the orange. This is a 1 row stripe. And I really do feel like you need at least 2 rows. Otherwise, it just looks a little zigzaggy, unless that's the look you're going for. Okay. No, release that. So if this had been really, really loose, I could then take my orange yarn and I could, as I slip stitched with it, I could pull the working yarn and tighten it up a little bit. But you can see here was our slip stitch, and it's gotten pulled to the back by doing the chain one in the new color. So we don't see the old color anymore. We only see the new color of the stripe. So the chain one determines what color your row is going to be. Is that clear, Ingrid? Does that help? Okay. And I'll make sure I write that on my instructions, that the chain one always determines the color of your row. So if you're continuing on with the white, your chain one is always in the white. It's when you're changing between colors that you need to do your chain one in a different color. Okay. So that, I think it makes a really nice join. Works up really nice. You do get, I'm going to turn it inside out for you to see. Your colors carry up. You do get a little bit of a seam, but it's on the inside and it's very minimal. And you just carry your colors up. These you could tie off. If I was finishing, which we'll talk about in a couple of months, but if you're worried about these stitches being loose, you could take your end of your old, the end of your new, and tie them together, because no one's going to see that. Just don't pull them so tight that it distorts your stitches. There you go. And then you can continue on with your striping. Same thing for the body. You can see the seam a little bit better in the body. So instead of getting a spiral design, we're really getting like a stacking circles going around by slip stitching and then chaining one. We're not we're not getting the spiral like we've done the last couple of projects. But here you can see I'm just carrying my yarns up. I've alternated up and it's ready to go. All right, so that's making the circle join. The other part I wanted to share, does anybody have questions? No questions about that? Did I answer it? Okay. Is the muzzle. So the rest of it is all the same. The body, the arms, the legs, the tail, their construction is all the same. The muzzle is a little different, and it's a little hard to tell from the picture what is happening. All right, but the muzzle, and I actually haven't started it yet, but I'm going to show you on the pattern. And I'm going to remind you how to do, we'll do it on this one. How to do the decreasing. So right here, do not stuff. What essentially you're making is we're going to start with a ring, and we're going to increase, and then we're going to decrease and go back down to a very small circumference. So what you're going to get is a flat, kind of double-sided piece of fabric like this. So this would all be decreased in. So it's going to be a two-sided fabric that we're not going to stuff. It's just like extra thick. And when we stitch him to the face, we will put some stuffing behind it, depending on how stuffed you want it to look. But it wasn't necessarily clear from the picture that you are making a double layer of fabric. You're not just creating a shape going this way. You're making a shape that goes all the way around, okay? So let me just show you the pattern again. So you'll start with your 6 single crochets into the magic loop again. You'll go up to 12, you go up to 18, and then because we don't want it a complete circle shape, now it changes a little bit because we want it more of an oval shape. So we'll do 2 single crochets in the first stitch and then 1 single in the next 5 stitches. So this has, instead of continuing to grow as a circle, now it's going to continue to grow as more of an oval shape. So we'll get up to 21 stitches. And then we're going to work rows 5 through 18 even with just our 21 stitches, okay? You'll do the circle join the same, or you could do it the way we've done it in the past if you don't want to do it, if you find this too fiddly. Okay, and then we're going to start to decrease. So I'm going to pretend that this little piece is where we want it to be, and we're going to, I'm going to show you how to do the decrease here. So now we'll work 2 decrease. We're going to take 2 single crochets and decrease them to 1, and then 1 single in the next 5 times. So we'll take it back down to 18 stitches, and then we're going to do 1 single in the next stitch and then a decrease down to 12 stitches. So we'll repeat that all the way around, and then we'll decrease in every stitch down to 6 stitches, and then again down to 3 stitches. So we're taking it all the way back down, okay? So I like to do the invisible decrease. So I'm going to remind you how to do that. So let's just assume I'm here on decrease here. So let's move that out of the way. To do an invisible decrease, we've done this before, but I just thought I'd give you a little reminder. So to do a decrease, we're going to go into under the front loop of the first stitch and under the front loop of the next stitch, just the front loops. And then I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to pull through all 3 loops. Is that right? All 3 loops? Yes. So that's taking the 2 stitches down to 1. And then it has us doing 1 single in the next 5 stitches. And then we do that regularly. Now that I said that, I have to remember how to do that. All right, so let's do a invisible decrease again. Come underneath the front loop of the first stitch, the front loop of the next stitch, yarn over, and come through all 3 of those loops. So I've taken 2 stitches back down to 1. And then the other part you need to be careful of is making sure you know where your next stitch is. So I'm gonna pull this up a little bit here. All right, so here was the first loop I went underneath. Here's the second loop I went underneath to pull together. So that is coming out of this stitch right here. So you need to make sure you don't make another stitch here. I'm gonna take it back real quick. I'm actually gonna mark the stitch I want to go into. I'm gonna take the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, and make them into 1. I'm gonna put a marker into the next stitch. I'm gonna make just a regular single in. That'll be an easier way to see it. All right, so underneath the front loop, underneath the front loop, pull all 3 loops. There is a tendency to want to go underneath this right here, which is part of the decrease. So resist the temptation and then go into the next stitch right there. And it makes a really nice invisible decrease. The other way that we have done that you can do a decrease, if this is new to you, is to go underneath both loops. Underneath both loops, yarn over. It makes it a little bulkier and a little taller, so that when we go into the next stitch, it does leave a little bit of a gap. I like the invisible because it keeps it all on the same line and really just cinches it all in. All right, so let's just pretend I'm doing that right. Kind of lost track here where I'm at. I would come back, finding my invisible join there. Let's do another decrease. Let's try that again. Under the front, under the front, pull 3 off. And let's do one more decrease. Under the front, under the front. And here I am back at my join. So I'd still do it the same way. I've been doing these now for a while, so I can see where my, I can feel the seam because I've got my finger in there. I can feel the seam, but I can also see where my first stitch was. Turn to the back. Make that tight. I'm just going to use my stitch marker to kind of pull up on it a little bit. Put my loop. Make sure you pull in a big enough loop there that you don't lose your loop. So then you have to start over again. Pull it through. Chain 1 and continue on. Okay, so eventually you're going to keep on with these decreasing rounds, and it's going to get smaller and smaller. And you're going to end up with a fabric, obviously much bigger, that looks like this. So it'll be flat, but double-sided because this will continue to come in. And then just leave it that way. So when it comes time to join it, that'll be ready to go. Okay. If you don't get to this, know that we're not going to use it until the next piece. But I want to focus the next session on doing the head with stopping and starting the stripes. So here's your beginning will be right here, and you'll do some in the orange and then the rest in the black. This we will end up having to cut the yarn for. So I've got some tips on how to do that and how to get a nice smooth join. This is how I first started, and that's when I decided to do the circle join. So it'll be much smoother. It'll look much more like this with the stripes stopping and starting in the middle of the row. Okay. And we'll do the ears, and we'll do the oval for his tummy on the next session. Are there any questions about Hobbs? Okay. I think
we don't stuff him. We don't stuff him as we go along, right?
You don't have to stuff him as you go along. What's nice is that his there's very little shaping to his. It doesn't get so tiny that we need to stuff as we go. So we will stuff everything at the end.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm gonna do one side of it ahead of time so I can figure out how much stuffing and how far to go. Because I think for him to be able to bend at the arm, it needs to be pretty flat at the top part. But I'll test that out ahead of time. So
does the pattern tell you where to sew them on at?
Yes. She tells you to pin everything on, and she gives really good descriptions on how to do the belly to get it the right shape. But I'm gonna test it out because I just want him to be perfect. It's so stinking cute. Ingrid's making two because she's anticipating her son stealing them.
He's gonna steal the second one I make.
Yeah.
I have two babies coming, so I might be making two.
So cute. And then you can get him a little Calvin and Hobbes book too.
Oh, that's true. I've never read that book, so I don't know anything about it.
Oh, the comics are so funny. Calvin is, I can stop recording now.